for the game. It's a rich thing.
Hi everyone, Russell here again. So today I'll be doing a 3,000 mile review on the Honda Talon 1000X-4. Okay, so during this 3,000 miles I had approximately 1,000 miles on it completely stock, 2,000 miles on it with the turbo kit and the R suspension. So I'm going to try and just give you a comparison between the stock 64-inch suspension, the 69-inch suspension, and the 72-inch suspension, because I've also built a HCR 72-inch. So I can kind of give you a comparison on what I think between those three different options with this X4 that I personally had experience with it. So if you've been watching my channel, I have approximately 14,000 miles behind the steering wheel of a Talon. 11,000 miles of those have been in the two-seater, and about 3,000 miles in here. So I can also give you a comparison on how the two-seater R compares against the four-seater X, the four-seater R, and the four-seater 72-inch HCR suspension. Alright, before we get started on this, I'm going to point out all of the things I don't like, and some people are going to interpret this as I do not like the Honda Talon, and that is not the case. There is no such thing as a perfect machine, and as far as reliability and longevity goes, this thing is a league in its own. So everybody has different needs and requirements and what's important to them, okay? After 14,000 miles behind the wheel of a Honda Talon, I would not consider buying anything else, okay? I mean, is it appealing that the X3, you can bump it up to 400 horsepower? Absolutely. Is the X3 going to be better on the racetrack? Absolutely. On the Polaris, you have 10 times more options and aftermarket upgrades. Absolutely. Does the Polaris have a little more room in the four-seater? Definitely. Okay. For me, the reliability aspect, going out and coming back with me driving the vehicle, is very important to me. Okay. There's some design flaws. There's some upgrades that need to happen, just like every side-by-side. Okay. 11,000 miles on my first Talon. No problems with the clutching. I mean, you think about, especially people in the dunes, 11,000 miles, how many belts a person would go through, okay? So, and just add that up. This machine overall, I absolutely love it, okay? Putting this R suspension on it took it to a whole nother level and capability. And so don't get me wrong on this review. I love the Talon. I would buy it again. This is my second one, so I've already bought another Talon. So please don't take this in the wrong way. I love the Talon, and I'm just going to show you some things that need to be fixed, or some design flaws, or some upgrades I recommend. So let's start off with my biggest complaint still, and that's the air filtration system. So right here is the stock air filter that comes with your Honda Talon, every single model. Really the problem is the location, okay? That snorkel right there is just sucking from a very, very dusty area, and what that does is it causes you to change this $50 air filter every 300 to 500 miles in dusty conditions. Okay, so that air filter is absolutely amazing for filtrating out air. That's why I highly, highly recommend getting a particle separator. To me, that's one of the first upgrades you should make, is that particle separator right there. That will give you, up to 2,000 miles on this factory air filter. All right, my next complaint is kind of lack of technology. So you look at this, and it looks like it's about from the year 2000. So I can tell you I have a 2004 Honda Rancher ATV right here in the garage, and the speedometer is not much difference between this 2020 Talon and the 2004 Rancher. Okay, so yeah, will this probably last forever? Yeah, and that's what Honda goes for, is longevity, durability, reliability. But when you hop in a Polaris with like the ride command and the navigation and all the other options where it shows you the shock input from their dynamics, it really makes this look pretty pathetic. So if you're looking for technology, and the Honda Talon is probably not going to be your best option. So here's the 2004 Rancher I was telling you about. Like I said, not a big difference between a 2004 $3,000 ATV and a 2020 $25,000 UTV. Alright, so here's my honest review on the rear seat. So I'm 6'1", 250 pounds. It's a little snug, okay? I mean, I will say the Can-Am has more room, the Pro XP has more room, but there's also a fine line between having too much wheelbase, and I think the Honda Talon wheelbase is really at a very good spot. So if you want a 4-seater for 4 adults to ride in all day long, this may not be the best option for you. You know, if you're a family with some smaller people, children, whatever, this is going to be a great option. You know, the stadium seating is nice because you do sit a little higher in the rear and slightly inside the front seats. So that's one advantage I like over the other models, okay? They have more legroom. This has better views as far as sitting in the back seat. So I think the wheelbase on this, so keep in mind the R suspension adds 6 inches of wheelbase over the X factory suspension. So I am very, very, very happy with this suspension. Like, I wouldn't want it any longer, I wouldn't want it any shorter. So as far as the wheelbase goes, I think it's absolutely perfect. Alright, so this is an aftermarket shift gate from CA Technologies. Like, I think it was $30 in that ballpark. I'm not very thrilled with the factory shift gate, so I think this is one of the first upgrades you should do. Okay, and when you do that upgrade, there's a little adjustment screw right here in the back for the shift cable. Always make sure that when you put that into low, that it reads low on the display and not a little dash. Okay, so that's where there's a lot of, you know, issues with the Subtrans, is people going when it's not fully engaged in gears. Okay, the other thing is if you go through snow or mud, like right here I'm in high or even in low, you know, you get stuck and you have to slam it into reverse. I mean, that's super quick, fast process. So I don't like the factory shift gate. Definitely consider upgrading to something like this. Okay, the next thing I'm not thrilled with on the Honda Talon is the electric power steering. Okay, this is the power steering out of the 4-seater. I was not happy with it in the 2-seater or 4-seater. Okay, so this is approximately a 30-watt power steering kit. So what happens is if you keep everything stock, it's going to be adequate. But as soon as you start adding some fat tires on there, getting some weight in the back seat, in the front seat, the power steering is going to kind of stall out and basically not work. So I'm going to put some pictures in of the upgraded power steering, okay? So there's pros and cons to the upgraded power steering. I have the Epowersteering from Ken down in California. Okay, so one thing I like about this power steering is it is adjustable, right? So I can go to max power where I just spin the steering wheel with my fingers, or I can turn it all the way down to where there's no power assist. So of course, higher speeds, less assist. Rock crawling, slow speeds, maximum assist. So I do like that adjustability on it. Okay, so I'll put a link in the description for the install on the power steering. So what I like better about the factory power steering is it's waterproof. Okay, the Epowersteering comes with a separate ECU, and it's not going to be waterproof. So that's really one of the downfalls. I will also say it took me a little while to get used to it. Not that one is bad or one is better, it just is a totally different feel. So if you're looking at the Talon, just know that you put bigger tires on it, put a lot of weight in it, a lot of accessories, you know, if you get roll cage, passengers, all that stuff, that the power steering, you're probably going to be disappointed with it, but there is an upgrade. All right, my next complaint is going to be the fuel tank. Okay, this is the factory fuel tank. It's approximately 8 gallons, 7.9 gallons. It's just not enough. Okay, so I'll put a link in the description, but I've upgraded to the 12-gallon trail tank, which is basically bolt in, no modifications needed. But 8 gallons is not enough for a 4-seater. But I will say, so far this has kind of been a negative video, but I will say, when you ride with a Polaris or a Can-Am of equal horsepower, the Honda Talon will take 20 to 40% less fuel. So yes, they have a bigger fuel tank, but my Talon has been more efficient every single time. That's not even a question. At least 20% less fuel. So having an 8-gallon in a Talon is, like having a 10-gallon in a Can-Am or a Polaris. But that 12-gallon, to me, is a must-have upgrade. One upgrade I think is necessary if you drive in mud or snow is the i4 wheel drive bypass. Okay, so in most cases, I'm happy with the i4 wheel drive, specifically in dry stuff, rock crawling. It works great. Okay, but where the i4 wheel drive fails you is once you get into deep snow or deep mud, it'll cut the power off to the engine. Okay, so Hess, and I'll put a link in the description, Hess has an i4 wheel drive override kit. Super easy to install. You plug it, there's a couple plugs on the front differential, hook it up to a powered, a keyed powered source. And then what you do is you just leave it in 2-wheel drive. You don't change that. And if you're going to go through deep snow or mud, simply just flip that on. It's going to activate 4-wheel drive without the i4 wheel drive interference. So I think this is around $120. If you're in snow or mud, definitely consider adding that as well. One other quick little modification I did is I moved the headlights switch from over here, and I put the hill descent that came there, and then of course I have my winch switch there, but I just swapped those out. Super easy, doesn't cost anything. You have to kind of splice the wires and extend them a little bit to make that swap, but it is so much better having your headlight switch right here where you can see it and switch it really easy. And then I just put my light bar switch above it. All right, this isn't necessarily a Honda issue. This is a Fox issue. Doesn't matter, 2.0 shocks, 2.5 shocks. But right here is the factory reservoir cap, okay? You use a needle to check and fill your nitrogen levels. Okay, so I highly recommend removing these caps. And why is because these have a tendency of leaking off. And when that leaks off, it changes your suspension, your ride height drops, it's much rougher, your shocks aren't functioning properly. With these new JC caps that I have on here, you just twist this off. There's a Schrader valve in there. You can put a gauge on there, check it. I run all my shocks at 200 PSI. So highly recommend upgrading the reservoir caps on your Fox 2.0 or 2.5 shocks. All right, so I'm just going to kind of give you my opinion on the non-live valve version, live valve version, and what I have is the Fox IQS system, okay? I don't think there's a right answer here because everybody has different needs and wants and driving styles for their Talon. Okay, so one of the first differences is the non-live valve will have 2.5 shocks in the rear, 2.0 in the front. Okay, live valve 4-seater will have 2.5 front and rear. Okay, the Fox IQS is only compatible with a 2.5 and a 3.0 shock. So if you have a X model 2-seater or 4-seater with 2.0 shocks in the front, you cannot add IQS to it. So in my opinion, and for how I drive, I think the live valve would be the best option. What the live valve does is take steering and brake input and adjust your shocks on the fly. So if you're locking up your brakes, it's going to stiffen up the front so you don't nosedive. You go around the corner, it's going to stiffen up the outside so you can corner faster and have better stability and less body roll. So to me, that's pretty pretty amazing technology to have. Like, I wish I had the live valve version. All right, so what I have is the Fox IQS, and the difference between that is mine is completely manual. Okay, so if you have a non-live valve version, you're basically going to adjust the shocks 1, 2, or 3, so soft, medium, or firm. So what the IQS does is there's a switch, a rocker switch inside the cab here. And of course you can mount this rocker switch wherever you want, but soft, medium, firm, it takes a fraction of a second to adjust those shocks. One of the advantages of the IQS is it does have a lifetime warranty. The disadvantage is you can only get it from Shock Therapy, and they have to install the valve here for the shocks. Okay, so the IQS does have a separate ECU, which I have it installed up here, that does need a power hookup. So hopefully this will kind of help you pick, do you want a non-live valve? Do you want to add IQS to your non-live valve? Or do you want a live valve and add IQS to your live valve? So what the adding IQS to your live valve would do is, because the Honda live valve only has soft and sport, so there's only 2 settings on the shocks. So that would basically, if you added IQS, that would give you 6 settings. So you could adjust either the live valve setting or the IQS setting. So I absolutely love the Fox IQS. If you don't have adjustability on your Talon and you want it, IQS is a great option. All right, another common issue with all Honda Talon models is the front differential seal leaking. Okay, a lot of people get upset, and that's understandable. This shouldn't be an issue you have to deal with. But on the other hand, it's about a half an hour of work, and it's a $10 part if you're out of warranty. If you're not out of warranty, your dealership should replace it for completely free. So every single front diff leak I have seen has been very, very minor, and most of them didn't even replace the seal. They just kept driving it, and it actually stopped leaking on its own. So if you get a Honda Talon and you get a little bit of oil right here, it's typically on the driver's side on the front, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal. Should you have to deal with it? No, you shouldn't have to, but if you have it, don't sweat it at all. The frequent debate I see with the Honda Talon is greasing or not greasing your wheel bearings. So the problem is, a lot of people come from Polaris to Honda, which is a good idea in my opinion, but they're used to crappy parts on a Polaris. They have grown accustomed to greasing their bearings and doing all kinds of other stuff that you do not have to do with the Talon, okay? So this R suspension is from my 2-seater, so I am sitting with 14,000 miles on the suspension, okay? Right here is what the wheel bearing looks like. This wheel bearing was not designed by Honda to be greased, okay? When people go to grease it, that little opening right there in the middle is where you're trying to push grease into, and it's a sealed bearing, okay? In my opinion, do not grease your wheel bearings. I have 14,000 miles on these. They're going just fine, okay? The grease tool for the Honda Talon is about 60 bucks, okay? You can buy 2 wheel bearings for 60 bucks. Don't grease the wheel bearings. Another thing is, grease is just a dust magnet, okay? So my advice to you, do not grease the wheel bearings. Just drive them until they're bad. A common question I see online is, what size of tires can I run? Okay, if you're running an X 4-seater or a 2-seater, you're going to be limited to 30-inch wheels, okay? With the factory suspension. Okay, some tires are a little smaller and you can squeeze 31s on. Okay, this R suspension, 32s, 33s all day long, no problem whatsoever. Something else I want to warn you about, because a lot of you are previous Polaris or Can-Am owners and you've been buying Super ATV stuff for a long time, okay? That's fine. A lot of Super ATV stuff is an upgrade in quality over Polaris and Can-Am factory parts. I'm going to tell you 95% of Super ATV stuff, ball joints, bushings, axles, are a huge downgrade. Do not buy that crap and put it into your Honda Talon. Okay, there's only 1 or 2 axle options that are better than factory. Personally, you can rebuild these axles for 130 bucks. I have a separate video showing you how to do that. So just be careful what aftermarket products you are buying and make sure that it's an actual upgrade and not a downgrade in quality. Okay, the brakes on the Honda Talon in general, I'm just going to give them a B grade. There's definitely a lot of room for improvement, but for 90% of drivers, they're more than adequate. Another thing I do not like about their brakes is the brake pads are ridiculously expensive. They're a couple $100. Okay, so one little trick a lot of people are doing is you buy the Honda Pioneer 1000 brake pads. They're actually a little bit thicker. They will work in there and they're a fraction of the price. So just keep that in mind when you wear out your brakes. Try and get the Honda Pioneer 1000 brake pads. All right, I'm gonna give you my personal opinion on wheels, okay? A lot of people I see are buying 4+3 wheels, wheel offsets for the front, which is fine. It's gonna be wider. It's going to give you more stability because of that extra width. But just know, if you run anything wider than a 6+1 or a 5+1 wheel offset in the front, what's going to happen is your steering rack is going to fail. It's going to put extra pressure on your wheel bearings. It's going to wear out your ball joints faster. It's going to wear out your tie rods. So my advice, the factory wheel offset, the 6+1 or the 5+1 is by far the best option. So not only is it going to wear out all your suspension parts on the front, your steering wheel is going to be like a chainsaw going down the road, like vibrating the crap out of you. And all that vibration is causing extra unnecessary wear on your components. So please run a 5+1 or a 6+1 in the front, okay? Now the back is a little different story here, okay? Because from hub to hub, it's 3 inches narrower in the rear than the front. So you'll want to run a 5+1 or 6+1 in the front, a 4+3 in the rear to get that same width, okay? Me personally, I'm not a fan of wheel spacers. A lot of people will run a 6+1 all the way around, and then you have to have a 1.5 wheel spacer on both sides to give you that extra 3 inches. So that's an option if you want to be able to rotate your tires. Do 6+1 all the way around with 1.5 rear wheel spacers. All right, wheel size, very common question. I see a lot of people make comments online and I think they have absolutely no effing idea what they're talking about, okay? The factory comes with 15-inch wheels. Cool, they work great. Okay, I have 14-inch wheels. I have at least 7,000 or 8,000 miles with 14-inch wheels. They will fit, they're not going to rub. I haven't had rocks get stuck in there. It'll be just fine. So it depends on the type of driving you want to do, okay? When you have more tire, that's a shock absorber right there. More tire with the proper inflation is going to give you a smoother ride. Okay, little bigger wheel, little smaller tire. These are both 32-inch tires, but with a 15-inch wheel, you get less rubber, and that's less shock absorber. So that's going to be more stable at higher speeds and cornering. This is going to be smoother riding. So I recommend a 14 or a 15-inch wheel on the Honda Talon. And I see people all the time giving away their stock wheels. These are decent wheels. Like, don't give those away. I have 2 sets of these stock wheels, and I'm very happy with them. I run in the sand and snow. I run these SS360s at 6 psi in the front and 8 psi in the rear. I've never had a bead brake, nothing. So I'm very, very happy with them. 2, I know I'm going to get questions about these tires and how do I like them. I will tell you, I absolutely freaking love them, okay? So these are 33s. In the snow, I give them a 10 out of 10. So these are 33, 12, 15s on the rear. In the snow, absolutely amazing. By far the best tire I've ever had. Okay, in the sand, I give it an 8 out of 10. I mean, it's not going to be as good as a sand pedal, but I love the versatility. If you have to hop on asphalt and drive a mile or 2, you can do that in these tires, and you cannot do that in sand pedals. So where I drive snow and sand, Highly, highly, highly recommend these tires. Absolutely love them. All right, here's something to consider when buying tires, okay? So when I left my Honda Talon at Shock Therapy for 2 weeks, the only thing they said I needed to change was my tire selection, okay? So this is what the tires I had on the EFX, okay? You can see it's like completely flat. That is absolutely terrible for handling, okay? So you look at my SS360s, these handle absolutely amazing. So if I had really good luck with these, yes, but there is a huge difference. So I see a lot of people recommending tires. So go for like a rounded tire instead of a squared off one like this, if high speed and handling is important to you. All right, so one thing the Honda Talon has that every single side-by-side has, and that is bump steer, okay? So I'm going to specifically refer to the R suspension. So what bump steer is, real quick, is these are your front tires, and when your suspension cycles from top to bottom, bump steer is when your alignment does this as your suspension cycles, okay? I can tell you that the Honda Talon R suspension has approximately 4 inches of bump steer, okay? So what this is doing for you is when you're cycling your suspension, jumping or landing, and it wants to jerk to the right or the left, that's because your tires are either doing this, depending on the position of your suspension cycle, or it's doing this, okay? So 4 inches, that is a lot, okay? So I did some work with Shock Therapy approximately 6 months ago, and I will show you what we have here, okay? This bump steer delete kit, and I don't know how well we can see it because of the lighting. Okay, basically, it's not for sale yet, but I've been driving it for 6 months, and then this is a game changer. This is the best $120 upgrade you could do. So on the end of the tie rod, there is shims on it, okay? So it shims your tie rod up to fix the geometry errors from the factory, okay? So if handling and suspension is important to you, you have to correct this bump steer kit, okay? I know I've already had this bump steer kit for 6 months, and Shock Therapy is saying they're going to release it for the Talon in maybe another 3 to 6 months from now. But once that is available, I'm telling you, I have a 2,500 miles on it with this bump steer kit. Game changer. You have to do it. So get the bump steer kit, get rounded tires, and you will have an amazing handling Honda Talon. All right, so when you go to buy the Honda Talon, there's a couple options, okay? There's, you know, the AC and the A model, okay? One is California only models, and the other one is everywhere else in the world models, okay? I would prefer to have the California model because it has the EVAP system, and what the EVAP system does is it catches all of the fuel fumes, and so when you have it in your toy hauler, your cargo trailer, your garage, you're not going to get any fuel smell. Okay, now another thing, it does have vacuum ports on the throttle body, so if you need to add any accessories like the turbo kit, you already have a vacuum port there. For me, I had to, because I have a non-California version, I had to drill the throttle body to get that vacuum port. So from a performance standpoint, everything is identical. The MSRP is even the same. So you just have that luxury of having the EVAP kit with the California models. All right, so we're going to talk briefly about spring sag. Okay, every single side-by-side has spring sag. I haven't come across a Polaris, Can-Am, Kawasaki, any of them where your upper tender spring right here is, on most side-by-sides I see, are completely collapsed, okay? So this is what you call a dual rate spring, right? Okay, so the tender spring, which is on the top part, that's going to absorb your first 2 to 3 inches on your suspension, which is going to be a much softer spring rate. Okay, once that tender spring collapses, then it crosses over, and this picks up, which is a stiffer, harder spring rate. So you hit a pothole, this is going to be smooth. You jump 5 feet off the ground, it's going to land and then cross over to this. So with that being said, I highly recommend getting Shock Therapy spring kit. I believe they're $600 for most Honda Talon models. It makes a huge difference. Just through the springs, you have approximately a 30% ride improvement. Okay, Shock Therapy also has what they call the ride improvement system, which is basically they're going to take your shocks apart, revalve it, and it's going to function so much better. And they're going to give you several options on your type of driving. Are you like a desert person? Are you a dunes person, etc.? And then they're going to calculate in all of the weight and accessories you have. So before you get your spring kit, I recommend getting all the weight on your Honda Talon. So when you do order the spring kit, you get the right spring rates for the weight of your vehicle. But in my opinion, this is a must-have upgrade. All springs, all coil springs from every manufacturer are junk. Go with the Shock Therapy spring kit. Very, very impressed with them. All right, I see a ton of questions online about the rear axles. Okay, Honda Talon rear axles are very, very, very good quality. Okay, so keep in mind this is a posi rear diff, and I mean that's great in most scenarios unless you're on asphalt. Okay, so keep in mind with a posi rear diff, every time you turn, one tire has to spin on that asphalt. Okay, so that puts an enormous amount of pressure, and these typically fail on the inboard side. Okay. $130 to rebuild them. So my advice is just stay off asphalt. The next reason that will cause you to have failures is jumping. Okay, so in the Honda Talon and most side-by-sides, depending on the jump, you have to keep full throttle until you land to prevent some nosedive. Okay, so you know if your actual speed is 30 miles an hour and you're full throttle and your tire speed 70 miles an hour and that tire lands and hits the ground, that puts a lot of pressure on this joint. Okay, I will tell you the Rhino axles, like I said before, Super ATV products are junk. A lot of the aftermarket axles are not going to be as good. Sure, some of them provide a warranty and it's a pain to swap them out, but really every single time I've had it, issue with it, it's been the inboard side. So this outboard side is still 14,000 miles on it, it's still going strong. All right, I've seen a lot of complaints about the hood coming off, okay, towing it down the road. Here's a little tip. Put your hood on right and it won't fall off. It is absolutely impossible. So here on the front side, there's two tabs, right? We got two tabs right there, okay? Slide those into here, and once those are properly in place, I guarantee you the hood will not fall off or fly off and tow any speed down the road. You'll be fine. Put it on right. All right, a quick rundown, DCT versus CVT, right? Honda Talon has a DCT, double clutch transmission. You have two clutches in there, first, third, fifth gear. The other clutch, second, fourth, and sixth. It's just like a lot of the sports cars. Porsche has been doing it, BMW's been doing it for years, right? Okay, the huge advantage of this is you don't have a belt. There's less maintenance, okay? The engine and the transmission share the same oil, okay? It takes 6.1 quarts. Every time you change the engine oil, which should be every 1,200 miles under normal driving conditions, you're also flushing out the transmission. And that's one reason this thing lasts forever. So how's it work? Okay, when first gear is engaged, second gear is already ready on the other side. So it just takes a fraction of a second to go from first to second. Once it shifts to second, then the other side is ready for third. It will anticipate if you're going to shift up or down. And then you have paddle shifters on the steering wheel. So you can put it in manual mode, go down the hill, use compression, all types of things, okay? Absolutely love the DCT. It's a game changer. It takes reliability to the next level. Like, I never go out without seeing a belt cover off and somebody swapping out a belt, okay? Very rare. Spend a week in the sand dunes and tell me how many people you see changing belts out. The disadvantage of the DCT, you don't have that easy tuning capability, okay? So for example, on a CVT, you know, first off, if you change the tire size, you need to reweight your clutch. You increase the power, you need to reweight your clutch, which is a pain. But you can also tune that clutch to your specific needs. If you want 70-mile-an-hour top speed, cool. You can wait out your clutch to get you where you need to be. If you want to go over 100 miles an hour, boom, you can adjust that CVT to do that. So that's one huge advantage, okay? The other is the power loss, okay? A DCT, you're going between the crank and the hub, you're going to lose between 10 and 15% power, okay? The average CVT is you're going to lose between 20 and 30% power. So that's a huge advantage. So as far as clutching goes on the CVT, you have so many possibilities of changing that and fine-tuning that to exactly how you want. Okay, with the DCT, you can change it, but you can't change your top speed. You can change your shift patterns. You can upload software to do that. So there's pros and cons. To me, I'm going with the DCT because of its reliability and lower maintenance. If you can take a 200 horsepower Can-Am or 180 horsepower Polaris and get 5,000 miles out of the primary and secondary, that's an absolute freaking miracle. Okay, I have 14,000 miles on the Talon and have never had a single issue. So keep that in mind. Like, what is more important to you? The ability to tune it and perfect it to exactly how you want, or the reliability? Like, both choices are great. Obviously, it just depends on what is important to you. All right, so here's my 2-seater versus 4-seater comparisons. And I'm just going to do stock against stock. Okay, the 2-seater is superior from a performance standpoint in every way possible. On the racetrack, I mean, your horsepower to weight ratio is better. Your handling is better. Everything is better about the 2-seater. Okay, so you might ask, okay, why did I sell my 2-seater and buy a 4-seater? Because I want more room. The one place that this has an advantage over the 2-seater is it's much better going up steep inclines and going down steep inclines. That's about it. So just keep that in mind. I mean, I switched to this. I'm happy with it. I love it. But if performance is your primary concern for buying a UTV, you should probably consider the 2-seater over the 4-seater. All right, so the pros and cons between the 64-inch, the 69-inch R suspension, and the 72-inch HCR, okay? In my opinion, the HCR 72-inch is the best option. It's the widest, it gives you the most stability, and it's the strongest built suspension components out there. Disadvantage is it's like in the $7,000 ballpark, okay? So the reason I went with the R suspension is because I already had it handy. I could literally just swap it from the 2-seater to the 4-seater. So if you want a wider stance and save a little bit of money, there's a lot of people upgrading to the HCR system that has basically most of the R components laying around that you can pick up for very cheap, okay? It makes a huge, huge difference just going from that 64 to the 69-inch width. I mean, incredible. Highly recommend it. And I mean, I've heard through the grapevine that here February, maybe March of 2022, Honda is actually going to release a 1000R 4-seater. Okay, so that's in the rumor mill. But HCR, first choice, most expensive. So that's my take on the 3 different suspensions. If you get the HCR suspension, you can have your sharper turning radius. If you go with the R suspension, you need to swap over the R rack as well, which is going to make your turning radius absolutely suck. If you put R axles with the X steering rack, you're going to have axle bind in the front axles. So that's just some things to keep in mind. Like, if money's not an object and you just want to be the best out there, HCR. HCR, keep your X rack in there, best turning radius, best suspension around. If you want to save a little money, swap over the R rack, swap over the R suspension. You're going to have a phenomenal machine. So that's my take on the suspension stuff. So again, thank you everybody for watching my channel. I appreciate all the comments, the positive support. I absolutely love running into people all over the country that have watched this channel. I enjoy answering any questions that you may have. Like I said, reach out to me on Facebook because sometimes I don't get the notifications on YouTube. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. And I do have a big project coming up. I plan on doing some engine work and increasing the power by 40%. So I'm hoping to get that video out. That's going to consist of swapping out the pistons, head studs, fuel rail system, injectors, and the goal is to be right around 200 wheel horsepower. So if that's something that's interesting to you, hit the subscribe button. My plan is to do an entire video, dyno the Jackson kit, rebuild the engine, and then dyno it again. So we can tell you like, okay, this kit's at 120 horsepower, 130, 140 wheel horsepower, whatever it will be. We'll do the upgrade step by step, and then dyno it again. And we should be somewhere between 180 and 200 wheel horsepower when complete. So again, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see future content like the engine build.
It's not a game, it's a